Imagine staring up at this just perfectly calm, infinite blue sky, right?
Yeah, but you're bleeding to death.
Exactly. You're bleeding out on a completely chaotic, just deafening battlefield.
It's mud and screaming everywhere.
Right. And you are a wealthy, wildly ambitious prince. And literally just moments ago, you believed you were destined to be this great hero.
Like a man who was just going to bend history to his will.
Yes. But as you lie there, feeling your life just literally drain into the mud, you suddenly realize that everything you've ever valued, empires, glory, the literal medals on your chest, it's all a complete joke.
The emperor could be riding right past you and you just wouldn't care.
You wouldn't care at all because the sky above you is eternal and your ambition is just, well, it's a microscopic speck of dust.
It's a terrifying realization. It's entirely disorienting.
And that exact moment is when Leo Tolstoy completely shatters the illusion of human control. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here. And we are really stepping into the intellectual arena today because every assumption we have about human agency, power, and, historical consequence is about to be systematically dismantled.
It really is. And to be clear, this isn't just some dusty book review. We are taking you on a deep dive into the philosophical architecture of one of the most, well, frankly, intimidating yet profoundly rewarding works of human expression ever created.
We are, of course, talking about Tolstoy's War and Peace.
Right. And if you've only ever heard of this work in passing, you probably view this massive, 1,200 plus page tome as just a daunting historical textbook.
Oh, absolutely. With its 500 characters, it feels like something assigned at a graduate level Russian literature course that, let's be honest, everyone just pretends to have read.
Exactly. But our mission today is to completely obliterate that misconception.
We are stripping all of that away. The intimidating historical timeline. Gone.
The sheer density of the plot, we are bypassing it.
Instead, we're plunging directly into the beating heart of Tolstoy's revolutionary philosophical analysis.
We're talking about an exploration of human existence, the absolute fallacy of the great man theory, and this desperate, often agonizing search for meaning in a world that operates on fundamental chaos.
And Tolstoy himself didn't even consider this work a novel.
No, he flat out refused to call it a poem or a historical chronicle.
Right, to him, it defied all traditional categorization.
Yeah.
It functions way more like an immersive philosophical simulation.
That's a perfect way to describe it. He basically takes humanity, places it into the ultimate pressure cooker, which is Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812, just to observe what happens.
He wants to see what happens to the human soul when the polite artifice of society is just burned to the ground.
That framing is so crucial because he's really running an experiment here.
He is. He wants to see how people behave when the rules they've constructed to protect their fragile egos suddenly vanish.
But to understand the individuals trapped inside the simulation, we first have to, zoom all the way out.
We have to map the massive invisible forces acting upon them.
Which brings us to Tolstoy's most controversial argument, his view of history itself.
This is where he really upsets the historians.
Oh, big time. Because usually when we talk about history, there's this expectation of mechanical precision, right?
Yeah, you look at a major historical event, and the textbook shows this clear, jagged timeline.
Right. The historian points to it and says, leader A gave an order, therefore event B happened. It's clean. It's binary cause and effect.
It's like believing the CEO of a massive corporation actually does all the daily physical work.
Yes. Or it's like thinking you're driving the car, but you're actually just a passenger strapped into the back seat.
And that binary view is deeply comforting to us. We desperately want to believe that someone, somewhere, is actually at the steering wheel of the world.
We really do. Traditional historians view history a bit like a game of billiards, right?
Exactly. Napoleon hits the cue ball, it strikes the army strikes the enemy, and the balls fall perfectly into the pockets.
But Tolstoy looks at that billiard table and essentially just flips it over.
He completely rejects it.
He argues that history isn't a game of billiards at all. It's more like, it's like a murmuration of starlings.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Those massive flocks of birds that swoop and dive in the sky, creating those incredible fluid shapes?
Yeah, where there is clearly no single bird leading that flock.
Exactly. The leader isn't shouting orders from the front. The shape of the swarm is dictated by millions of tiny micro-adjustments happening simultaneously.
Among every single bird in the flock. That is the perfect visualization of Tolstoy's historical determinism.
Because he harbored this intense, almost visceral frustration with the great man theory of history, didn't he?
He really did. He viewed the idea that a single genius, like a Napoleon or an Alexander the Great, dictates the fate of nations through sheer willpower as a very dangerous collective delusion.
He thinks historians falsely impose a rational logic onto fundamentally illogical events.
Right. They look for a single, neat cause for a victory or defeat.
Mm.
But they ignore the reality that millions of interconnected, entirely random actions are actually responsible.
So let's look at the mechanics of that. How does that actually play out on the battlefield in Tolstoy's simulation?
Okay, let's look at the Battle of Borodino. It's one of the bloodiest days in human history and the central pivot point of the invasion.
Right.
Tolstoy positions Napoleon standing on a hill, peering through a spyglass, and he's issuing these grand, complex tactical orders.
Like, move this cavalry division here, flank with this artillery there.
Exactly. Napoleon truly believes his sheer intellectual will is dictating the fate of Europe in that exact moment.
He really thinks he's playing 4D chess up there.
He does, but Tolstoy reveals the absolute absurdity of the situation.
How so?
Well, by the time Napoleon's aides-de-camp gallop down the hill and actually reach the front lines to deliver these orders, the situation has fundamentally changed.
Right, because war is chaos.
Exactly. A regiment he ordered to advance has already been decimated. Or a hill he wanted to flank is now obscured by a sudden shift in the wind, blowing thick black smoke across the valley.
So his brilliant strategies are completely irrelevant before they're even spoken.
Yep. He is pantomiming control in a situation of total, unmitigated anarchy.
He's that passenger strapped into the back seat, holding a plastic steering wheel, completely convinced he's driving the car.
That is exactly it. The disconnect between his ego and the reality on the ground is staggering.
And Tolstoy contrasts this brilliantly with the Russian commander-in-chief, General Kutuzov, right?
Yes, the contrast is night and day.
If Napoleon is the guy furiously spinning the plastic steering wheel, what is Kutuzov doing?
Honestly, Kutuzov is arguably asleep in the passenger seat.
Literally asleep.
I mean, somewhat literally, yeah. Tolstoy portrays Kutuzov as an overweight, tired, almost completely passive old man.
Which infuriates everyone around him.
Oh, completely. During these massive strategic meetings, while his younger generals are passionately arguing over complex battle plans, Kutuzov is literally nodding off.
They all think he's totally incompetent.
They think he lacks vision. But Kutuzov possesses what we can call the wisdom of surrender.
The wisdom of surrender, I like that.
He alone realizes that he cannot control the murmuration of starlings. He understands that attempting to force a rigid master plan onto the chaos of battle is not only futile, it's suicidal.
So rather than fighting the current, he yields to the natural, inevitable flow of history.
He practices historical aikido, basically.
Yeah. He lets the opponent's momentum defeat them.
He recognizes that victory won't come from his own tactical brilliance. It will come from the patience and collective spirit of the Russian people.
And the vastness of the Russian geography.
And of course, the brutal reality of the oncoming winter.
Right. His entire strategy is basically to keep his army intact, retreat, and just wait.
He lets the French army stretch its supply lines until they snap. He lets the environment and the masses do the actual work.
Which completely shifts the entire burden of history from the generals to the absolute nobodies.
Exactly. Tolstoy is basically screaming at the reader that the true architects of history are not the emperors in their lavish tents.
The real drivers are the anonymous soldiers freezing in the mud.
And it's the simple peasants making the heartbreaking, split-second decision to burn their own crops.
The scorched earth policy.
Right. They slaughter their own livestock and set fire to their own homes, rather than let the French army use them for supplies.
And notice how that happens. Because Kutuzov doesn't issue a sweeping decree ordering the peasants to burn everything.
Oh, not at all. That collective, agonizing decision is made independently by thousands of individuals scattered across hundreds of miles.
It is the emergent behavior of a population pushed to the absolute brink.
That synchronized movement of the masses is what starves and defeats Napoleon, not a brilliant counterattack.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second because this brings up a massive philosophical dilemma.
Let's hear it.
If our individual will is just an illusion on the grand historical stage, I mean, if we are all just tiny birds in a flock, caught in a current of determinism we can't control, doesn't that render human action completely meaningless?
That is the big question.
If I can't steer the ship, why shouldn't I just give up? Why do anything at all?
That is the exact core existential dread that permeates the entire narrative. Tolstoy brings you right to the very edge of nihilism.
Because if history is just a machine, we are just gears being ground down.
Exactly. It's incredibly depressing if you leave it there.
Right. So where does he take us?
He doesn't abandon you in that despair. He executes this profound philosophical pivot.
Okay.
Tolstoy argues that while we are completely powerless to dictate the sweeping narrative of global history, we possess absolute terrifying agency over something far more important.
Our internal moral lives.
Yes. So we can't control the macro, but we have total dominion over the micro.
True freedom, then, isn't found in trying to conquer a continent or alter the geopolitical landscape.
No, those are vanity projects built on illusions.
Right. True freedom is found in how we govern our own souls in the immediate present.
How do you treat the person standing right in front of you? How do you react to suffering?
How do you find meaning in a piece of bread when you are starving?
Exactly. Which means we have to zoom all the way in now.
Because if the only place we can truly exercise agency is within our own minds, we really have to look at the psychological journeys of the individuals trapped in this historical machine.
Let's bring Prince Andrei Bolkonsky back into the conversation.
We started with him bleeding out under the sky at Austerlitz. Let's unpack the psychological architecture that put him there in the first place.
Right. Andrei begins his journey as a deeply cynical, emotionally detached aristocrat.
He possesses a brilliant mind, but he is just suffocating.
He really is. He is trapped in a marriage to a woman he finds intellectually vapid, and he is forced to participate in this superficial high society life in St. Petersburg that he completely despises.
He's surrounded by people gossiping about inheritances and social ranks, and he just finds it utterly nauseating.
So he seeks an escape hatch.
He seeks salvation through external validation. He decides he wants to be a Russian Napoleon.
Which is so ironic. He believes that achieving massive military glory, doing something quote-unquote great on the historical stage, will finally inject some profound meaning into his hollow existence.
He wants his name etched into the grand narrative.
And Tolstoy essentially says, okay, let's test that hypothesis.
Which leads us to the epiphany at Austerlitz. That opening scene. Let's really dig into the mechanics of that realization. Why does simply looking at the sky dismantle his entire worldview?
Well, because the sky represents the eternal objective reality of the universe. It's completely indifferent to human drama.
It doesn't care about medals or emperors.
Not at all. Andrei has spent his whole life obsessed with the subjective, artificial constructs of human society, rank, honor, glory, nations.
But when he falls wounded, the deafening noise of the battle just fades into the background.
He is suddenly immobilized. He's unable to fight or command. He's forced into complete stillness.
He's violently unplugged from the simulation.
And in that forced stillness, looking at the slow, quiet movement of the clouds, the contrast just shatters his ego.
He realizes the absolute emptiness of his ambitions.
He sees all of human vanity, the flags, the medals, the emperors strutting around, as infinitely small and ridiculous compared to the infinite expanse above him.
The hero's journey he thought he was on is revealed to be a complete narcissistic delusion.
He realizes that history doesn't care about him. And more importantly, he realizes he shouldn't care about history.
It's a brutal ego death. I mean, he survives the battle, but he returns home a profoundly broken man.
Only to immediately face another crushing blow.
Right, his wife dies in childbirth the very night he returns. The universe just relentlessly strips away every illusion he clung to.
It's tragic. But while Andrei's journey is this slow, agonizing dismantling of ambition, his closest friend, Pierre Bezukhov, experiences something totally different.
Oh, Pierre. His journey is more like a chaotic pinball machine of philosophical desperation.
Pierre is really the philosophical engine of the text.
He is introduced as this awkward, illegitimate son, right?
Yeah, he's massive, he's physically clumsy, and he's totally out of place in refined society.
But overnight, his wealthy father dies, and Pierre inherits a massive, unfathomable fortune.
He goes from being a ridiculed outcast to the wealthiest, most eligible, most powerful bachelor in all of Russia.
He essentially hits the 19th century lottery.
Big time. But instead of just partying and enjoying it, he is plagued by this relentless, burning question. How am I supposed to live?
He is just desperate for an instruction manual for human existence.
Because Pierre is inherently good-hearted, but completely unmoored. So he tries to literally purchase meaning.
He attempts to adopt various external systems to organize his soul.
First, he tries philanthropy. He owns thousands of serfs peasants who are effectively enslaved on his vast estates.
So he decides he is going to be the enlightened savior.
Right. He plans to build hospitals, schools, and eventually free them.
He tries to fix the system from the top down. But Tolstoy meticulously shows why top-down systemic reform, when it's driven by naive idealism, always fails.
Pierre doesn't understand the mechanisms of his own wealth.
He leaves the execution of his grand plans to his corrupt, deeply entrenched estate managers.
And those managers know exactly how to manipulate Pierre.
They show him a beautifully constructed new school building, completely hiding the fact that it's empty.
And that the peasants are actually being worked twice as hard just to pay for it.
His philanthropy just becomes this abstract mathematical exercise. It only serves to stroke his own ego.
It doesn't touch the actual moral reality of the serfs at all.
He realizes he can't buy authenticity. So when wealth and societal reform fail, where does he pivot?
He turns to esoteric philosophy and organized religion. He joins the Freemasons.
Okay, why the Freemasons specifically? What is the psychological allure there for a guy like Pierre?
Well, the Freemasons promised access to hidden, ancient truths. For a man who is literally drowning in chaos, a secret society with strict rules, complex rituals, and a clear moral hierarchy is incredibly seductive.
It provides an artificial structure for his soul.
Exactly. He throws himself into their rituals, believing he has finally found the brotherhood of enlightened men who will guide him to spiritual purity.
But the honeymoon period wears off quickly, doesn't it?
Oh, very quickly. He looks around the lodge and realizes something deeply depressing.
What's that?
He realizes that the psychological mechanism of disillusionment is universal. Human beings inevitably turn profound spiritual movements into hollow networking opportunities.
Wow. He looks at his quote-unquote brothers in the lodge and sees the exact same corrupt, status-obsessed aristocrats he despises in the St. Petersburg salons.
They aren't there for spiritual enlightenment. They're there to make political connections and wear fancy aprons.
It's just the aristocracy playing dress-up.
Every system he tries to plug himself into just electrocutes him.
Including his marriage. He marries the stunningly beautiful Helene Kuragina,
which turns out to be a trap set by her manipulative family to secure his wealth.
She is morally bankrupt, the marriage is a living hell, and it actually culminates in Pierre fighting a duel where he almost kills a man.
Which violates every moral principle he thought he held. He is spinning completely out of control.
Which sets up the central paradox of Pierre's existence. Where does a man who has exhausted wealth, power, philanthropy, marriage, and esoteric religion finally locate his soul?
This is the most fascinating psychological pivot in the entire work.
He only finds profound, unshakable inner peace when he is literally stripped of absolutely everything.
Right. During the French occupation of Moscow, Pierre stays behind in this delusional attempt to assassinate Napoleon.
Which goes terribly wrong.
He gets arrested for intervening to save a woman instead, and he is thrown into a French prisoner of war camp.
Consider the severity of this shift. He loses his massive wealth, his aristocratic titles, his physical freedom, his warm clothes, his regular meals.
Everything. He is subjected to freezing temperatures, starvation, and the daily terror of random executions by the French guards.
And yet, in the mud, surrounded by death, he experiences a spiritual awakening. How does extreme deprivation trigger peace?
Because extreme deprivation forces him entirely into the present tense.
Right.
In the prison camp, all the artificial layers of his identity, the things that were causing him so much anxiety, are forcibly removed.
He doesn't have to worry about his estate managers or his unfaithful wife or Masonic rituals.
He is reduced to a biological entity whose only goal is to survive until the next morning.
The complexity of his life drops to zero.
Exactly. And in this crucible of shared elemental suffering, he meets a character who fundamentally alters his trajectory.
Platon Karatev.
Platon is such a vital contrast to every other mentor Pierre has sought out.
Because he isn't a brilliant general, and he certainly isn't an intellectual philosopher reading ancient texts.
Platon Karatev is an illiterate peasant soldier. He is round, simple, and smells of sweat and earth.
But for Pierre, Platon is the absolute pinnacle of human wisdom.
Platon doesn't have grand, sweeping theories about history or the cosmos. He doesn't agonize over the past, and he doesn't harbor anxiety about the future.
Platon has this incredible scene where he's just eating a baked potato, right?
Yes. The baked potato scene, it's so visceral.
I mean, he's just eating a potato. What's the big deal?
Well, it's how he eats it. The reverence he has for this simple, hot piece of food completely mesmerizes Pierre.
Because Platon embodies radical acceptance.
He doesn't demand that the universe makes sense. He teaches Pierre that happiness is not found in intellectual systems or societal reform.
Happiness is found in the simple biological fact of existence.
It's found in shared suffering, in basic human empathy, and in finding pure, unadulterated joy in the warmth of a fire or a piece of bread.
Platon doesn't fear death because he sees himself as just a single drop of water in the vast ocean of life. When the drop evaporates, the ocean remains.
It's a profound realization.
And both Andrei and Pierre, two incredibly privileged men with access to everything the world has to offer, had to be pushed to the absolute brink of death to wake up.
Andrei bleeding out under the endless sky, Pierre rotting in a freezing prison camp.
Without the violent friction of suffering, they were just sleepwalking through a comfortable existence.
Comfort breeds moral complacency. Tolstoy is basically arguing that it takes the violent tearing away of everything we think we own to reveal who we actually are beneath the costume.
Which creates a massive philosophical collision when we look at the broader society.
Because this profound internal awakening experienced by Pierre and Andrei doesn't happen in a vacuum.
No, it is set against a backdrop of an elite society that is aggressively, desperately trying to remain asleep.
They are clinging to their costumes. This is where Tolstoy's masterclass in societal critique comes in.
The contrast between the individuals who are waking up to the harsh reality of existence and the society that refuses to acknowledge it is where Tolstoy really sharpens his satirical knives.
So let's look at how he sets the stage.
You have this massive epic about the brutal realities of war. But the story doesn't open with cannons firing or troops marching through the snow.
It opens in 1805 in the luxurious, exclusive high society salon of Anna Pavlovna Scherer in St. Petersburg.
You have all these elites dressed to the nines, drinking champagne and engaging in witty banter. Why start an epic about war at a cocktail party?
To establish a baseline of sickness before showing the cure.
Oh, wow.
Tolstoy wants the reader to fully grasp the utter absurdity of the Russian aristocracy. While Napoleon is literally amassing armies in Europe, threatening the very survival of their nation, what are the elites doing in St. Petersburg?
They are obsessing over who is inheriting which estate. They are orchestrating marriages for financial gain.
They are spreading vicious, calculated gossip to ruin reputations.
They are completely insulated inside a bubble of their own creation. It's like they are playing a high-stakes game of Monopoly while the house is actively on fire.
That's a great way to put it. And Tolstoy uses an incredibly subtle, brilliant mechanism to highlight this disconnect: linguistic structuralism.
He uses language itself as a weapon.
It is one of the most masterful uses of language in literature.
Let's break that down. The historical context here is that the Russian elite were deeply insecure about their own culture, right?
Yes, they idolized Western Europe, specifically France. To prove their sophistication, the Russian aristocracy spoke French in their daily lives.
They wrote letters in French. They barely used their own native Russian tongue.
They viewed Russian as the language of the dirty peasants.
So in the original text of War and Peace, Tolstoy actually embeds entire paragraphs of French dialogue.
But he isn't just doing it for historical accuracy. He assigns a moral weight to the languages.
He uses language as a moral compass.
Exactly. In the narrative, the French language represents deceit, hypocrisy, and moral decay.
The characters who are the most artificial, the most manipulative, and the most disconnected from reality speak almost entirely in French.
We mentioned Helene Kuragina earlier, Pierre's disastrous first wife.
Right. She is the physical embodiment of the hollow aristocracy.
She is described as having a marble-like beauty, completely cold, and her dialogue is heavily French.
She uses the language to mask her moral bankruptcy behind a veneer of sophistication.
French is the mask.
But then, what happens when the mask slips? How does he utilize the Russian language?
Russian is deployed to represent truth, raw emotion, and a genuine, organic connection to the earth and the common people.
Whenever a character experiences a moment of profound, authentic emotion, fear, deep love, spiritual realization, they inevitably drop the French facade and revert to Russian.
As Pierre's journey strips away his illusions, the closer he gets to the truth of his existence, the more his syntax shifts away from aristocratic French
to the simple, direct Russian of the common folk.
It's brilliant. He bakes his philosophical critique right into the grammar of the book.
And this linguistic divide points to a much darker systemic rot at the core of their society. The unstated, invisible reality of the feudal system.
We can't talk about the elites in the salon without talking about the people paying for the champagne.
Right, because over 80% of Russia's population at that time were serfs.
They were human beings, tied to the land, bought and sold like agricultural equipment.
They generated the immense wealth that funded the balls, the French tutors, and the lavish estates.
But they are almost entirely invisible in the salons.
Exactly. The juxtaposition is designed to make the reader deeply uncomfortable.
The glaring contrast between the luxurious French-speaking aristocrats debating European politics and the brutal, grinding reality of the millions of peasants whose suffering makes that debate possible exposes the deep moral rot of the ruling class.
They aren't just out of touch, their entire existence is a parasitic fantasy.
And right in the middle of this suffocating, highly orchestrated society, a grenade goes off.
And her name is Natasha Rostova. We absolutely have to bring Natasha into the analysis because she is the vital counterweight to all this artifice.
Natasha is the absolute antithesis of Helene Kuragina.
If Helene represents cold, calculating, French-speaking artifice, Natasha is the embodiment of innocent, unrestrained, messy life force.
She is pure emotional energy.
She's constantly making mistakes. She doesn't follow a logical, strategic path.
She falls deeply in love with the brooding Prince Andrei. But then, when Andrei goes away for a year, she is seduced and almost completely ruined by the manipulative, charming Anatol Kuregin.
She causes scandals. She is emotionally erratic.
But her chaotic trajectory is entirely the point.
Natasha represents the terrifying, complex nature of human free will when it is forced to navigate strict, unforgiving social norms.
She is trying to operate a heart built on pure, spontaneous emotion within a society built on rigid, transactional rules.
Her mistakes aren't driven by malice or calculation, like Helene's. They are driven by an overflowing abundance of life trying to find its proper shape.
Precisely. She is the living, breathing, flawed heart of the narrative.
She stands in stark contrast to the cold logic of the generals planning battles on maps and the fake smiles of the aristocrats maneuvering for inheritances.
She feels everything completely.
Okay, so we've mapped the philosophical terrain here. We've looked at the massive, uncontrollable sweep of historical determinism.
We've tracked the intimate psychological breakdown and rebuilding of the individual's soul.
And we've dissected the hypocritical, parasitic society they inhabit.
So how do these monumental themes crash together to form Tolstoy's ultimate thesis?
To understand his final argument, we have to fundamentally redefine the two words on the cover of the book: war and peace.
This is where the synthesis of his entire worldview happens, and it challenges everything we assume about the title.
Let's start with war. The book is famous for its battle scenes. They are expansive, visceral, and shockingly graphic for the era they were written in.
Very graphic.
But if Tolstoy doesn't believe in military strategy and he doesn't believe in heroic generals, what is the philosophical function of war in his simulation?
Well, Tolstoy's view of war is aggressively, relentlessly anti-romantic.
And this perspective was forged in reality, right?
He actually served as an artillery officer in the Crimean War in the 1850s. He saw the horrors of combat firsthand.
He smelled the rotting flesh in the field hospitals.
So when he writes about war, he strips away every ounce of glory.
There are no Hollywood moments. No one gives a rousing speech before charging the enemy lines and dying a beautiful, tragic death.
He focuses entirely on the unheroic, grotesque reality.
He gives us the sensory details of the chaos, the deafening noise that prevents anyone from hearing orders,
The blinding smoke that obscures the enemy.
the sheer random luck of a cannonball taking off one man's head while completely missing the man standing 2 inches beside him.
He describes a young, terrified soldier fleeing from a French soldier, only to realize the French soldier is just as young and terrified as he is.
He describes the agonizing, slow death of men bleeding out in the mud, begging pathetically for water, completely forgotten by the generals who put them there.
War, in Tolstoy's philosophy, is not a grand chessboard of strategic genius.
It is the ultimate manifestation of human folly.
It is a mindless machine that grinds up human life to satisfy the fragile vanity of leaders who are entirely disconnected from the consequences of their actions.
War is the ultimate illusion of control pushed to its most destructive extreme.
Okay, so if war is chaos, vanity, and the violent illusion of control, what exactly is peace?
Because philosophically, peace in this narrative cannot merely be the absence of combat.
It can't just be the moment the generals sign a treaty and everyone goes home.
That is the most profound revelation of the text. Peace is not a geopolitical state. It is not an abstract concept.
Peace is an active, ongoing, highly localized process. It represents the fragile, often painful moments of human recovery.
Give me the mechanics of that. How does that manifest for the characters who actually survive the simulation?
Let's look at the final synthesis of the narrative arcs.
After surviving the absolute horrors of the invasion, after the trauma of captivity, the loss of wealth, and the death of loved ones, the characters do not just magically revert to who they were in 1805.
You cannot unsee the burning of Moscow. You cannot unexperience the freezing mud of a prison camp.
They are fundamentally, permanently altered.
The cynical Andrei has died, having finally achieved a terrifying abstract love for humanity on his deathbed, but realizing it's incompatible with living.
But Pierre and Natasha survive, and they end up finding each other.
But this isn't a fairy tale ending, is it?
Not at all. Natasha, who was once this whirlwind of youthful passion and erratic energy, and Pierre, who spent his life frantically searching the globe for grand philosophical meaning,
Sleeping romance.
they settle down.
They find an unexpected, quiet, almost startlingly mundane domestic peace.
Tolstoy dedicates the epilogue to describing their family life. Pierre is slightly henpecked.
Natasha is deeply absorbed in the unglamorous, exhausting work of raising children.
She isn't the dazzling girl at the ball anymore.
She is fiercely protective of her family, focused entirely on the immediate, tangible needs of her household.
It's a piece built on deep scars and profound mutual forgiveness.
They've both made catastrophic mistakes, they've both suffered immensely, and they have realized that the grand stage of history has absolutely nothing to offer them.
And that ending is the culmination of Tolstoy's philosophy. True, authentic life does not happen in the war rooms of emperors.
And it does not happen in the glittering high society salons.
Authentic life happens in the background. It happens in the quiet, repetitive moments of shared suffering, in the raising of children, in the simple, daily act of enduring the human condition together.
Peace is the hard-won ability to find meaning in the ordinary.
It is incredibly powerful to realize that this narrative trajectory wasn't just a story for Tolstoy, it was a blueprint for his own spiritual evolution.
His journey writing this book mirrored the psychological arcs of his characters.
He transitioned from living the life of a wealthy, somewhat wild aristocrat to eventually embracing a profound radical form of Christian anarchism.
He spent the latter part of his life trying to embody Pierre's revelations.
He embraced pacifism, focused on simplicity, began dressing like a peasant, and completely rejected the organized power of both the church and the state.
He believed that all government, all courts, all military institutions were inherently coercive and violent.
He lived the philosophy he spent years trying to articulate.
And let's just take a moment to appreciate the sheer, mind-boggling physical labor required to articulate that vision onto the page.
We aren't talking about typing on a laptop.
The physical creation of the manuscript is a legendary feat of endurance.
Tolstoy's wife, Sophia Tolstaya, was integral to this process.
She didn't just support him, she actively transcribed his horrific, nearly illegible handwriting.
She copied the massive 1,200-page manuscript by hand, and she didn't just do it once.
She copied the entire thing 7 times.
And certain complex philosophical sections were rewritten, revised, and copied out by hand up to 20 times.
It is a testament to how obsessively they wanted to ensure this philosophical vision, this exact delicate balance of historical determinism, psychological breakdown, and societal critique, was perfectly translated to the page.
It was an absolute obsession with capturing the truth of human existence.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together.
We have explored how War and Peace is so much more than a historical chronicle or a dense Russian drama.
It is a complete, systematic dismantling of the illusion of human control.
It proves that meaning isn't found in societal status, wealth, or the vanity of historical glory.
It is found in enduring the fires of suffering, developing deep empathy for our fellow humans, and embracing the simple, authentic truths of our immediate reality.
It forces the reader to ask, when the fires of history burn through your life and strip away everything artificial, what exactly is left?
Which brings us to our final thought.
We want to leave you, the listener, with a lingering question to mull over as you step back into your own life today.
Think about the philosophy we just discussed.
If Tolstoy is right, if the grand sweeping events of history, the wars, the economic collapses, the massive political shifts, are completely beyond the control of even the most powerful leaders, and are just the inevitable result of millions of tiny invisible forces colliding in a chaotic murmuration, how does that change the way you view the overwhelming global events happening in our world right now?
Think about the endless digital overload, the news cycles, the feeling that history is just rushing past us.
Does recognizing yourself as a powerless passenger in the backseat of history fill you with existential dread?
Or does it actually free you?
Does it liberate you, knowing that your only true actual responsibility in this incredibly chaotic world is to find authenticity, compassion, and profound meaning in your own quiet daily life?
It's a challenge to stop trying to steer the ocean and instead learn how to swim.
A perfect way to end it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the muddy waters of history and the human soul. We'll catch you next time.